Some games are a challenge. Old games used to be hard. Cuphead tries to combine the two into reviving all of the run and gun side-scrolling action shoot 'em up that used to be prevalent during the 16-bit era. Yes, this is a hark back to many periods, including the 1930s cartoon for inspiration. Picking up this weekend via Xbox Play Anywhere on the Xbox One and PC, but don't worry, Steam players can also pick it up for a few pounds cheaper if you just want it on PC. But just what are my thoughts of Studio MDHR Entertainment's first title, and one that's been long coming? Cuphead is something different, but something very old as well. This is an idea so simple that you have to scratch your head and think, why did nobody try it sooner? Cartoons have always been a target for games for over the years, and then they've slowly drifted beyond those and aimed towards CGI. Cuphead's inspirations come from a few decades earlier, the 1930s in fact, and its rubber hose animation style. Made famous through the 1930s such as Popeye and Betty Boop from Max Fleischer, this animation technique was prevalent, even to the point where a lot of the cartoons were banned and certainly risque in what they delivered and the subject matter that they touched on. Something continued here with the story itself, with your deal with the devil gone wrong, and then you have to collect other souls to save your own. This art style that it apes to mimic is absolutely incredible and impeccable in delivery, right down to hand-drawn cell animations on paper, photographed and brought into the game itself. All watercolour painted backdrops literally give it that look and feel of a real painting, and vivid depth applied to the multiple parallax backdrops, including animated frames such as the swinging tyre here and the clouds passing by. These and other subtle touches really add to the impact the game has, such as tears coming from enemies as you defeat them, or even the soft depth of field out of focus blur on the foreground and background. Other touches such as light beams streaming through the trees or the windows, and even the film grain and the chromatic aberration, or the colour bleed as they call it, can be toned down ever so slightly on both the PC and the console versions. The PC version does have the same options pretty much, except you can boost the resolution and turn VSync off, but at 4K it doesn't really look much different than 1080p due to the art style really being limited by the fact these are the assets they're drawn and the texture quality comes from those cartoon drawings. And that doesn't say that it's bad, because the whole thing looks absolutely excellent. But even though the game is hand-drawn to 24 frames per second, don't panic, the game runs at 60 frames per second. This means that all movement is as smooth and solid as it can be, and the frame rate analysis here you can see shows that there's no point at all to worry about any performance hiccups. The small pause you see here is on purpose. This is a parry move that you can use in the game to boost up your energy gauge and hit back certain coloured objects as you battle through the levels. The only minor issue that has cropped up is in 2-player on the Xbox One S. You can get a few dips right down to 40s in some of the heavier sprite sections on the run and gun sections. The boss battles don't seem as badly affected, and it only happens occasionally, but it is something to be aware of that you can get some small dips, which would have been nice not being there. Aside this, throughout my playthrough thus far, I've had no performance issues at all on both PC and Xbox One S here, so I wouldn't panic about it. Now, there's no point getting into what resolution it runs at. There is no geometry here. Everything, like I say, is hand-drawn and scanned into the game. Now, think of this along the lines of older titles, such as the original Mortal Kombat or Mortal Kombat 2, where actors and backdrops were digitized and scanned into the game and then animated through various frames of animation. Obviously, here there's a lot more work gone into it, but this is just like titles such as the classics Batman Forever and Time Cop on the Super Nintendo. Yeah, okay, maybe not then. But other titles aside, probably more akin to something like Donkey Kong Country, the original classic on the Super Nintendo from Rare, where everything was CGI created sprites and backdrops scanned into the game, gave it that impeccable look that was something beyond the realms of what we thought of at the time. This is very similar, except everything is drawn like an old 1930s cartoon and scanned into the game, with each individual frame coming from these hand-drawn animation cells then coloured in Photoshop. For more information on this and a lot more, check out the very interesting talk from GDC this year from Jake Clark, one of the lead animators on the title, who worked on the 2D animations of various films and titles such as Breadwinners on Nickelodeon. It's a very interesting talk indeed. So the visual style is something brand new, and so is the actual delivery of the title. Wearing its heart very much on its sleeve, its inspirations are clear, such as the recently covered Super Contra 3, which I covered in my Super Nintendo mini review, and other games such as Thunder Force 4, and the mighty Gunstar Heroes, and even Dynamite Headdy from Treasure, one of the treasures of the 16-bit era and Mega Drive for sure. Ex-Konami staffers went on a rampage when they set up that company and really pushed the delights of that machine. This has been their inspiration, but one of the reasons it's been delayed is they've added more into the title. Rather than just having up to 30, which is a new world record in one game, 30 bosses, they also have the run and gun mode, which is a standard, more run along a level, kill a load of enemies and then get to the end, and sometimes there may even be a boss there. The game is tough, but it's based around the old school method of learning the patterns and rhythms of enemies, and also how the enemy paths come through on the run and gun sections of the title. Once you learn of your plight, you walk out into this open vast landscape, very much like Mario World, and you can choose the levels and the sections where you want to battle next, earn improvements and coins to buy new weapons and abilities throughout the game, and other features that you can unlock, including secrets and hidden areas working throughout this map, which adds an additional layer of choice and diversity to how you break through the game. The only limitation is you have to defeat every single boss of the world before you can move on to the next, of which there are 4. This makes the game very enjoyable, and if one section does really grind you down, you can at least find another way around and play on a couple of others until you get enough skills or weapon power to move on to the next level. Now this game starts off very easy indeed, but it gets very tough very quickly. It is true to the origins of all the titles it so successfully mimics here. It really centres around your speed, skill, dexterity and eye-to-hand coordination and learning the patterns and rhythms, so you slow everything down. When you first get to a new section, you panic and try and rush through, which is never the right thing to do. Always take your time, study the patterns and then slow everything down, and then all of a sudden everything becomes a lot easier and you get into the rhythm of how the game plays. And it's this tempo and certainly the sequencing of enemies, obstacles and timing of platforms that is so well done. It really feels tough but fair, forcing you, almost tricking you into rushing through when really you need to take your time, and I absolutely love it. It really feels genuinely true to the titles of the older era. It's tough but fair. And if you're finding it a little tougher, you can even share local co-op, playing across the same screen in 2 pads, and away you go in Contra style. Sadly, online co-op isn't there yet, but it has been planned for a later edition. There was some talk around DLC additional benefits later on, but whether or not that will come all depends on how well the game is sold. But by early reports, it's done brisk business on PC and console alike. And I really wish them the best as they remortgage their houses into this studio and game, so I hope it all pays off in the end, guys. They've created something genuinely unique, fresh and diverse, and it doesn't follow the standard and I think done to death now pixel art of many indie smaller titles. Instead, something that breathes new life into this old side-scrolling 2D shooters that we used to play when we were children, but it's as good, addictive and beautiful as anything that a bigger studio could have created. It not only stands proud for the team, but also the Unity engine that powers it. A prime example of the diversity available from the engine. Small performance issues in 2-player aside on the Xbox One S. This is a stellar title on both visual quality and performance overall. Single player is rock solid. And just goes to show yet again that under the right hands, Unity can more than deliver the results. It really hooks you until the very last time you have to put the pad down, be it for dinner, work or sleep. I've really enjoyed my time with it. Now, the game isn't perfect, there are a few issues. The music soundtrack can grate a little. Certainly when you play the same level over and over again, the background tune can grate on your nerves, and I wish there was an option to just turn it off or at least change the tune randomly. Also, sometimes in boss battles, you can get an enemy stuck in a situation where you can just keep shooting them and they don't move into the next attack sequence until they take on their new form. The diversity in the bosses and the background layouts is again another beautiful touch. Such levels as flying through the Egyptian here with a video background spinning on the sands, you rarely get the time to admire the beauty and effort gone into each animation. Beautiful watercolour backdrops, fiendish enemies and huge hulking boss battles that take over the screen and multiple forms. Everything about this title lives and breathes perfectly to the 2D games of old. If you love those kind of tough shoot 'em ups from the arcade such as R-Type, Contra and Thunder Force and the Gunstar Heroes titles like I've already mentioned, then this will really scratch that itch and delivers on that in spades. If on the other hand you don't like a title that is completely unforgiving, forces you to play through in one go and just laughs in your face when you get it wrong, and you will each and every time, and learn the patterns, then this will not change your mind at all. But if you are on that list, this is £16 or $20 well spent, and I couldn't imagine a better title than what the team have delivered here. Unique in delivery, presentation and everything else it offers up. It's something brand new and fresh, and all the additional secrets, hidden bonuses and all the little perks that you can collect, such as playing the game all the way through without hitting any enemies at all, is something that myself and I'm sure many more will try to achieve throughout the game's lifespan. Anyway, as always, if you enjoyed this or anything else that I've put together, please feel free to like, subscribe and share where appropriate. Leave all your thoughts and feedback below, and you can also follow me on Twitter, where you can ask more questions and get involved with how I deliver more on the channel and the website. In the meantime, I'm off to play some games and maybe grab a couple too, so don't be a mug. I'll catch you on the next one.